Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Sagittarius, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of June 2025. I hope you are well. I'm using the Llewellyn Tarot for you today. Before the reading begins, if it resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's via link in the description box. You are looking for the link that takes you to Selfie if you want to purchase the extended. Alternatively, you can come over to Join Circle, where you can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee. Hang out with an extraordinary group of people and also participate in the live classes that we have running over there in all sorts of modalities. So if that lights you up, the thought of that, you know what to do with those links. Sagittarius, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. Could I have 3 cards for Sagittarius, please? Oh, okay. So we have the 10 of Swords in your recent past. Let's put that over there. What about current energy, please, for Sagittarius? We have the Moon, card of Cancer in the Major Arcana. And what about what's coming towards Sagittarius, please? Now, that's very interesting. You are not the only sign who's had the 7 of Wands show up in that position. They didn't have the World. Who was it? I think it might have been Libra. Off the top of my head, I think Libra also had that 7 of Wands there. But you have the World here, and I think the World is probably for you quite welcome. I'm looking at the uniformity of the skies across here. They are kind of dark. I mean, albeit there is illumination from the moon here, but you know, there are dark skies, which does represent stuff that is going on internally with you. And the way that feels, I would say, actually, you know, obviously the exception is the 7 of Wands, but the 7 of Wands brings with it a whole heap of other issues. So before I say anything else, let's get some clarifiers out on the table and put some meat on the bones of this reading here. So tell me about the 10 of Swords, please. Right, Ace of Pentacles. Oh, and the Hierophant reversed. Tell me about the Moon. Why is this here for Sag? We've got the 5 of Swords in reverse. Thank you. And the Star reversed. Tell me about the 7 of Wands, please. We have 4 of Wands and the Hermit. I feel like I need one more card for that. There it is, Temperance. There you are, Sagittarius. At the bottom of the deck, we have the Magician, and I feel compelled to tell you, and this thought isn't even formulating fully yet, but it's like, what's the feeling of it? It's not breakdown, it's breakthrough. It's not destruction, it's creation. And I don't know why that would be important, but this is the process that you are undergoing at the moment, and this, I feel like maybe you've been getting lost in the weeds here a little bit, Sagittarius. Like, there's a big picture thing that's going on here, and normally that's something that you would find it very easy to align yourself to, but for some reason it's been obfuscated. It's been so totally occluded from you that you've been just kind of wandering around going, well, what's it about, what does it mean, and not necessarily getting stuck on the detail, because I think the detail has almost been as elusive as the big picture for you at this point. Trust the process. I mean, I feel like there's quite a strong trust the process thing going on here, because the shadow card at the bottom of the deck, and just to say, if you are not familiar with that as a concept, it's the card that's at the bottom of the deck when you have finished dealing out all of the cards for the reading here, which in some way can give you an underlying theme for what is actually going on. And then we interpret the cards that turn up on the table with reference to that shadow card, which here is the World, but it's also the Magician, because we've got 2 different decks. We interpret everything that we see on the table through the lens of what is actually happening here. So yes, there are things closing out. Yes, there is the end of a cycle is approaching, but at the same time there is a creative act that is occurring too, and it's this kind of straddling the liminal space between the two without being able to see clearly where it's demarcated, right? The end and the beginning, because actually in retrospect it's very rare that we can actually perceive that as it is happening. So sometimes in retrospect it's very difficult to see it full stop, right? Because beginnings and endings just, they kind of blend in together. Anywho, we have got a card that represents Saturn by way of the universe here, or the world as it is in a standard deck, which is talking about, well, effectively a job well done. Although quite often it doesn't feel like that. It represents the end of a cycle. It represents a period where we are transitioning into a newer version of ourselves, a new set of circumstances, all sorts of things. I mean, it can be quite literally endings of sorts, in the material plane. But we also have this Magician card, which says no matter how much it feels like things are breaking down, actually there is something new emerging here. What might be missing, Sagittarius, if I might be so bold, is the imposition of your will on proceedings. And this is why I feel a little bit like you may have got a bit lost in the weeds, right? The big picture's missing, but also the details are missing. And where are you in the middle of all of that? So I shall explain more as we go on. We start over here with the Ten of Swords. And I'll be honest, this energy feels a little bit oppressive. Now, you look at the energy of the Ten of Swords and go, well, yeah, of course it feels fucking oppressive. Look at the state of it. But I don't think it's quite straightforward as it may first appear. It feels like there's something very, very subtle going on here. Now, when we look at the Ten of Swords, which is a card that is associated with disappointment, humiliation, betrayal, sometimes, certainly the end of a cycle. I quite often, the key phrase that I've used for that card is being left for dead, right, by circumstances, situations, hopefully not actually, right, but emotionally or mentally left for dead by a situation. But actually, because it's a 10, it represents a culmination. It represents some sort of completion, right? So you've got two cards on the table that are talking about this right now. And because it is the suit of swords, what we have is your words, your thoughts, your expressions, verbal expressions for sure. But there's something even a bit more than that. It's like realizing that you have come to the limits of reality as you know it and you understand it, and it's time to start expanding beyond it. Now, with that expansion, which is something that Sagittarius does very naturally, there is a cost. Something is lost, something is left behind, something is left for dead, potentially, to be replaced with this new expansive way of seeing this world, of the world, seeing a whole new set of parameters around reality. I'm thinking about the Ace of Swords as I'm talking about this, right? Which for me is about the holy shit, okay, very, very creative, being able to put things together in your mind that you didn't put in before. Because your mind is translating information that it receives, like literally non-stop. This is just what it does. Even while you're sleeping, it's doing this, right? It's taking in input from your senses, and it's trying to make sense of it here somewhere. When we shift from something that feels very uncomfortable to a whole new way of interpreting the information that we're receiving, it changes your perspective, it changes your reality. But it's often uncomfortable because we're moving out of something that we knew into something else. And, there may be emotional ramifications with that too. I like the Ten of Swords because it feels like a busting out of an old paradigm. And specifically because the Ten of Swords has a suffering quality to it, which is replaced by illumination by way of the Ace of Swords, right? So that's generally what we're talking about in terms of the Ten of Swords. When it shows up on its side, when any card shows up on its side, for me, it is either in the process of transitioning from upright to reversed or reversed to upright, so we've caught it at a snapshot in time, or it's an energy that is present but is not fully engaged to its fullest capacity, right? So we have here some sort of shift in the way that you think, some sort of culmination, some sort of that's how I used to think, this is how I think now, because something has changed in the interim. But it's very difficult to nail down exactly what that is. And I think for most Sagittarians, that actually this is representing the feeling of suffering without really knowing why. Let me be clear, like there may be very direct things that you can point out that are saying this is causing me pain right now. But it's like trying to find the sense in what is changing in the moment that it is changing, knowing that it is leading to some sort of ending, knowing that it is leading to some sort of completion, but not yet being able to fully make contact with the Ace of Pentacles that represents the new point of attention. This is why I feel like you're stuck in a bit of a liminal space at the moment, Sagittarius. Now, I want to pull up another deck, and I'm going to pull up a deck that I haven't used in a while, which is the, oh shit, what's this called? The Wildwood? The Wildwood. And normally I would make sure that all of the cards were the right way up. I'm going to do a ham-fisted attempt at it here because I think that whatever card that comes up is coming up as it's supposed to come up, and whether it's reversed or upright, that's what it's meant to do. So I'm just going to give these a shuffle. Tell me about this Ten of Swords, Ace of Pentacles. Thank you. We've got the Fool reversed with the Ace of Cups. Now, I think this is really interesting, and I think this is absolutely on point, because without a clear idea of what it is that is changing, ending, completing, done, and then what comes in to replace it, we do find ourselves rather kind of swimming around in a chaotic soup. Now, when the Fool is in the upright, we can say, wow, this is freedom, this is liberation. I have been released from the shackles of whatever my mind was telling me were the edges of, existence up until this point. And I know that I can focus my attention, because that's how I see pentacles, right? If you can invest it, it's a pentacle. I can invest it in this direction and I can move in this direction. But to feel intuitively that something is breaking down, or even to perceive it on some level, emotionally or spiritually or whatever, that something's coming to an end, and there's probably going to be a bit of suffering and discomfort associated with that. But I don't know what comes in to replace it. And then the Fool to be in reverse. It's like a crisis of faith, Sagittarius. Because additionally, the Hierophant is in the reverse, which feels, the Hierophant is slow moving, it's Taurus energy, it's about structure and stability and security. In amongst other things, I mean, the Hierophant could be many things, right? But in this case, this is what this feels like for me. It's like things are slipping away. And it's not quite as simple as the new things haven't started coming in yet. Something about the way that this has happened, something about the way that this is playing out, is leading to a little bit of a crisis in faith. Now, the Ace of Cups is at the bottom of the deck here, which is really, really interesting because, oh, fuck's sake, sorry, I've just noticed that video is frozen. Oh, and that's all just broken. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to have to go fix my technology. I'll be right back. Okay, hopefully we'll get a few more minutes out of that camera before it shuts down again. Anyway, what's interesting is the Ace of Cups here. Right? For me, it's a representation of the sacred relationship that you have with yourself, and then by extension that you have with God, Creator, Source, Universe, however you want to term it, right? We're all talking about basically the same thing. And how, in some way or another, you feel slightly cut adrift. Now, it's not to say that your intuition isn't working anymore, or that, that it's something along those lines. It feels more like, in the moment, what has been experienced is I don't really understand why this happened, or why I had to do this, or why that played out the way that it did. This sense of confusion, right? Which I think actually is borne out very well by the fact that we've got the Moon card in the in your current energy. Because it feels like something's been lost, or sacrifices have been made, and what's missing is the sense behind it. Now, Sagittarius finds it very easy to devote themselves to a higher expression of energy, right? Like, it just comes very naturally to the Sagittarius spirit to do that, right? To understand that things happen for a reason, and to trust that in time the reasons will become clear. But like, you're quite an old hand at this now, Sagittarius, and you're pretty good at spotting after not too much time why something is playing out the way that it is. But there's something that is forcing you to address or readdress this relationship that you have with yourself, which by extension is then the relationship that you have with God, Source, Creator, Universe, or whatever, that's felt actually like it's wobbled you a little bit, like it's kind of shook you a little bit. Now, I would say that this Ace of Cups represents a need to be compassionate and empathetic and loving to yourself. But I think there's something very specific about a situation that you have been in that has thrown up some feelings that you don't really know where to put at this point. And I guess my question to you would be, do you need to put them anywhere, or can you just be with them at the moment? Because the importance of being in the liminal space, not knowing if something is an ending or a beginning, or where you put your energy, or all of the things that I've already spoken about, is that not enough time has elapsed for you to be able to truly understand what is playing out here. And there may well be things that you may not understand over a period of time, but the question is, can you hold those without judgment? Can you hold those and still be in a loving space with yourself while it's happening? I think there's something about this that says that that's been shooketh a little bit for you, Sag. So when we move into your current energy, which is where we find the moon here, which is, yes, a card that deals with intuition, like this represents a sign of Cancer, so it's deeply feeling. But it also represents intuition and the workings of your mind at anything other than the conscious level. So we're talking about the subconscious or the non-conscious elements of your mind, right? Which by and large takes up a considerable proportion of what your mind does. We're talking about things that are going on beneath the surface with you. But the problem with that is that it's not straightforward, because your subconscious mind, your non-conscious mind, it doesn't talk in words, it's not mathematically literate, it doesn't understand the passing of time. It cannot just give you in a sentence what the fuck is the matter with you, as much as we would love it to do it, right? The subconscious talks in symbolism, it talks in dreams, it talks in intuitive bumps about things, but it also just is just totally fucking occluded unless you are willing to speak to it in its language. Now, I think what's quite interesting about this is that with the Five of Swords reversed and the Star reversed, both of these are Aquarian cards. This is Venus in Aquarius. This is just straight up Aquarius. What we've got is here an instability in some aspect of your the workings of your mind. Now, this is not to say that you are loopy or anything like that, such. This is not what I'm trying to get to. What I mean is that some aspect of the way that you understand the world, right, as per what we were talking about with the swords over here, some aspect of the way that you speak to yourself, some aspect of the way that you understand yourself and others, and some higher sense of things, has been rattled to the point where it is no longer as sturdy as it was. It feels like there's something that's been, I wouldn't go as far as to say dogmatic, right? But some sort of very strong principle that you have mentally, emotionally, spiritually been aligned with for a long time that is now feeling a little bit chaotic and shaken around, right? Or had been, at least. Because we have the Five of Swords in reverse, which is a bringing of stability to that. Now, I think it's important to note that where the Five of Swords, beg your pardon, shows up in the reverse, it only makes sense if first it was in the upright, right? So we assume that this has happened, and I think that some aspect of this crisis that you've experienced here would be the Five of Swords in the upright. But a recognition of where that has been playing out, right, is the stabilizing force, because it's saying some part of the way that your mind works, some part of the way that you express yourself, some part of the way that you think about reality has fundamentally shifted. And this liminal space that I've been talking about, that you've been occupying, is actually a place where this adjustment phase, almost, this adjustment phase takes place, because the shift in consciousness that you're having here feels bewildering to you. It doesn't seem to make any kind of sense, and maybe it's you've been tested in some sort of way, but you're starting to now kind of get a handle on what it is. And the Star reversed is a very interesting card, because it can either reveal to us where we have not been healed and healing is required. It can reveal to us where we are not comfortable with being vulnerable and open, like quite literally naked, right, to be viewed. Inside and outside being, essentially one. It can indicate a fear of being seen, which is kind of an extension of what I just said there. But it can also speak to how your hope can be crushed when you feel like you're not connected, right? The fact that you've got a stabilization of thought processes and perceptions around everything that the Star card represents that I just run through there says to me that there's a deeper level of insight, like a deeper level of communication that is happening between you and your subconscious mind, being facilitated by the willingness to be compassionate, be empathetic, sit with whatever it is that's showing up. I mean, this is not a good time for you to be judgmental with yourself, Sag. It's really daft, right? But the Hierophant can represent anything that has a hierarchical authority to it, right? So we can be talking about schools, we can be talking about universities, we can be talking about religious institutions, we can be talking about society and societal institutions, we can be talking about marriage, right? It's entirely possible that some of you are getting some sort of kickback from childhood, or childhood memories of particular forms of feeling like you weren't a part of something, feeling like you were disconnected, feeling like there wasn't really any hope or any, tangible future for you. I mean, that could be the real, the dark end of this, whereby you were let down by those in authority. You were let down by the hierarchy, right? Whatever hierarchy that was, in your moment of need, such that it cut you off from hope. Now, making contact with this aspect of yourself is allowing you, the whole point of it is to get you to heal it moving forwards, because there's something that just occurred to me and it just fucking went again. I don't know, this is really deep work. And when we've got Saturn moving into Aries, as he will be doing just a few days hence from here, albeit not staying permanently, he's going to be retrograding back into Pisces and then coming back into, which I think is happening around about September, October, and then moving back into Aries, where he will be permanently for like 2.5 years thereafter. In order for us to not slough off, but actually work through the karma that is represented by the previous cycle, right? And the universe, the world card would represent the completion of that. We have to sit with what, wonky thought processes that are residual from some point in the past. And we have to find a way to reclaim our faith, reclaim our trust, reclaim our compassion and empathy for ourselves, even without losing faith, without losing hope, without losing our fear of being seen. This fear of vulnerability keeps cropping up really strong. It's a month for deep excavation, ultimately, which is probably not what you want to hear, but, I've done a couple of videos for Circle recently. One was a weekly energies reading, and the other one was me reading them some shit from a book that I read, which was really, really cool, about the nature of Saturn in Aries. And across both of those, what was coming up were themes of personal responsibility, autonomy, sovereignty, like creating a reality that is reflecting the authenticity of you, right? So if you don't like it, if it's shit, you got to change it. It's time to start becoming very disciplined, very resilient, which I would say actually, on the whole, Sagittarius can be incredibly disciplined and incredibly definitely resilient, right? But when you're invested in something, when you're working towards this higher goal, this higher hope, this higher aspiration of something, like as Sagittarius locks in, it's significant, right? It's really, really significant. These themes, these Saturnian themes, have been cropping up a lot in the last week or so, which makes sense. But as I've said to other signs, and I said to the people on Circle, like, there are no fucking free passes from this point on. Like, we do not get away without doing the deep work, because we're creating the foundation of a cycle that's going to take, 30 odd years to complete, because Saturn is back in the first sign. It takes him a good, 30 years or so to get right the way around the zodiac. This is prime time for constructing the reality that you want to see. But first, we must address the things that are stopping you from engaging with that big picture, higher hope. And it feels to me like it's investigating why you have felt so cut adrift recently, right? So when we move into what's coming towards you for the rest of June, we've got this Seven of Wands. Now, the Seven of Wands for you feels like it's a very different consideration to, what was the other side, Libra, who got it in the same position. You have different clarifying cards. But the feel of it just generally feels completely fucking different. It was a different deck as well, so that probably makes a difference. But there is a commonality across the two, and the commonality is the feeling of being in strife, being in conflict, fighting yourself. For both of you signs, like, this is a big thing. Now, what are you fighting yourself around? Well, Four of Wands. Right? The Four of Wands is the card of home. It's the card of roots. It's the card of everything that should feel like secure. It should feel like, the way that I've explained it sometimes before is, when we think of home, sometimes we think about, 4 walls and a roof, right? A literal building. But really, the feeling of home is you getting the best news you've ever fucking heard, right? This is the greatest thing ever. Who are the people that you call to share that with? Who do you want to invite to enjoy and celebrate with you at that moment? Those people are home. By the same token, like, if you have fucking dreadful news, who is it that you would call? Who would you share that with to support you in your moment of need? Those people are home too. Like, home as a concept, home as a feeling, rather than as bricks and mortar, tiles, whatever, right? That for me is the essence of the Four of Wands. So it's also a card that can represent weddings and whatnot, right? So we're talking about something, we're talking about you relocating your roots, in all honesty, in June. That's what that feels like here. Right? But in order to do so, there are certain things from the past that need to be worked through and then released, or released, incorporated integrated, right? There are wounds of the past. There's a chattering on in your subconscious that needs to be addressed, but we have to be still to hear it. We need to be quiet to give it time to speak, and we have to allow it to speak in its own way. The Seven of Wands suggests to me that actually that's not really something that you're interested in doing this month, right? It's that the knowing that it needs to be done, knowing how it's going to be done, but resisting it. Now, for some of you, it might not be straight up resistance. It might be just the flood of, fucking normal life stuff hitting you that doesn't give you the chance to be quiet enough. You notice here that this guy is like planted in a waterfall, and he's just like, nah, you shall not fucking pass, right? He's having to hold himself kind of rigid to do that, and he's kind of having to concentrate quite a lot. Like, any work that's worth doing on oneself is not something that you can just do while you're making yourself some toast. Well, yeah, actually you can, right? But if it's meaningful, you've got to really turn your attention to it. You cannot be doing it while you're doing 15 other things, right? But the water is still flowing. Doesn't matter how rigidly he holds himself. I mean, yes, he might be facing off this external attack, but there's something coming from within you that's trying to come up to the surface and over the top of the fucking cliff here and disappear. And I feel like the more you try and stop that from coming through, or the less that you make time to allow that to come through, the more likely it is that you're going to miss something that's really, really important here. Now, I think by and large, by the end of the month, like you're not missing anything. You're picking it all up. But it's recognizing where time must be made for this. It's also recognizing that your fight is not with the outside world. It isn't with other people. It isn't with other situations. Like, any frustration that you may feel, and I do feel like there is some frustration with this, it's about what's going on inside, which is connected to what you are rooted in, what you are trying to root yourself in, versus what is actually yours to root yourself in. Now, you notice that this Hermit card, which is, a blessed card of going within and looking for the star. Don't know if any of you have ever noticed, but the star, there it is actually within the lamp, right? So that this thing that we've been disconnected from, this thing that we can't connect with anymore, right, it's there. We have to go find it. We have to go within to go look for it. It feels elusive. And whether that's because you're not making time for it, or you're resisting it, or whether the 3D world is just trying to snare your attention in every possible conceivable way, such that you are taken away from the importance of this. Like, I think you're going to be surprised the extent to which you fight yourself, Sagittarius. Now, I know a lot of Sagittarius, and if I say something like that, they'd be like, don't be ridiculous. I'm exactly aware of how much I fight myself on everything all the time. There's something very pure here, though, Sag. There's something very childlike playing out here. And you may be aware of how much you fight yourself, but this is something that feels deeper than that. And when I'm talking about relocating your roots, I do feel like we're talking about relocating yourself from the narrative that has been yours up until this point to something that is being created, which will be your story moving forwards. The thing that's trying to complete here is obviously whatever early rooting stuff has been being brought up for you recently. Now, that's obvious. But I don't think that you realise the extent to which you are actually creating at this point too. Now, the Temperance card is beautiful. I knew there was another card that needed to come out there, and it's so on point that it would be the Temperance card. You will never fully escape the circumstances of your past, right? Which is to say, there's never going to be a point, or there should never be a point, where you completely erase the details of them, right? I'm not talking about what was that film? It was a film with Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. It had something to do with sunshine. Or something... Everlasting Son of the Spotless Mind. Something like that, right? Where you could literally erase memories of things that were painful, right? And the whole film was about how that's just a fucking terrible idea, right? And I agree. Everlasting Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Da, 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 da. That's it. We should never be striving for that to be the case. Because everything that you have experienced it in the way that you experienced it at that point, and latterly how you have broken that down for yourself and understood it and become wiser in the processing of that, is a gift to you. But you do not need to be defined by it moving forwards. And something about what has happened recently has tapped you into that feeling from the past for one specific reason: to allow you to conquer it. We don't really talk about that so much in the Temperance card, but this crown here on the top of the mountain. The mountains represent challenges. The crown represents challenges conquered, right? It's been a long, hard road to walk from the mountain to this pool that the angel in the Temperance card finds itself in front of, but it's done it. And it has 1 foot in the water and 1 foot in the ground, right? It expresses the need for a temperate perspective on what has been experienced, where we take what has value and we leave behind what is emotionally painful about it, right? We see it from almost more from a distance, right? But the point is, the balance and equilibrium that the Temperance card represents, as well as a sense of your identity, Sagittarius, is actually a project that is ongoing, rather than a destination that you arrive at and go, okay, well, I'm fixed now, and so now I'm just going to do whatever, right? Whether that's being of service to other people or whatever. It's like, no, you are a continuous work in progress. And this aspect of you here, as you take away the pain that is associated with it, you heal that, as per the Temperance card. You can take what is valuable about it and utilize it to construct, utilize it to create, moving forwards. I mean, you're not the only sign. It's been right across the board so far, actually. Like, I haven't done all of the readings yet. I think you're like 4 or 5 or something like that, right? But the same message seems to be coming up for everyone. It's not a month of, super explosive outside of us action taking place. It's a month to be internally inquisitive. It's a month to be quiet. It's a month to be contemplative. It's a month not to allow ourselves to get distracted. For you, it may well be a month of simply recognizing how much you'd much rather fight outside of yourself than you inside. Like, you'd rather take on some sort of external battle than deal with this torrent of emotion that has been triggered recently on whatever it is that you're dealing with. Or even just that recognition on its own can be an incredibly valuable thing, because then you know that it's there and it's something to work with. Like I said, at every single turn here, you have to be kind to yourself, Sag. And fire signs generally fucking aren't, right? I mean, I'm sure there are other signs for whom that is true, but fire signs, they just tend to beat themselves up quite a lot about stuff, and particularly when it comes to how they did a thing. Because activity and experience and doing things is so important to the fire sign experience. There's a chance here to rewrite the narrative around the past and to completely release yourself from it. Like, at the point where we feel kind of lost, kind of cut adrift from the universe, it's usually because we haven't noticed quite what the universe is trying to teach us. And when we come back into connection with it, it is so much stronger than it was before. This month, the universe seems to be highlighting, God, creator, source, whatever, seems to be highlighting for people where the work is. Dedicate yourself to that. Pay not so much attention to what is going on out there in the world, on social media, in the media, in a country that you do not reside in, that may be thousands away, fucking miles away from you. It's witness the fight within yourself and choose to allow yourself to engage with it, de-escalating it almost. Right? Look at it from a different perspective and allow it to give you something creatively. I mean, that's what all of this is pushing towards. Who's to say if that chap didn't stop being at war with himself, being defensive, whatever, if he just hopped up onto the rock and got out of the way, how that extra bit of water may be the thing that just knocks all the detractors out of the way, right? Whoever's waving these wands around at him. I'd love to tell you that it's a month that's full of, wonderful opportunities and all these sorts of things. Like, wow, this is going to be the best fucking month of your life. But that's not how life is. And those aren't the messages that are actually that fucking helpful for us at all. This kind of thing where it's like, well, you can keep trying to push forward externally, but God, source, creator, the universe is going to hold you back because you're not looking at what you're supposed to look at. You're not seeing it from the perspective you're supposed to see it from. And until you do, you're going to be restricted. You're going to be held back. And just accept that this is something that needs to be done. Very Saturnian, actually. But it's the thing that helps you cross the threshold from old to new. And that's why it's important. So I'm going to go over to, where am I going? I'm going to go do the extended now. If you would like to join me, it would be lovely to see you there. You can do that on Selfie. Link is in the description box below. Or you can come over to Circle. Like I said, it would be awesome to see you in either place. If not, don't worry. There's not going to be much movement forward this month, like for anyone, as far as I can tell so far, at least anyway. But I think Saturn in Aries is going to hit everybody with a fucking bang. And those who try and shirk the responsibilities of moving from one phase into another. I'm talking about the internal responsibilities, the internal vulnerabilities, dealing with all that sort of stuff, right? It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be challenging for everyone, even if they are willing to deal with these things. But these things need to be highlighted in a way that we can see them, because if we don't know they're there, we can't deal with them, right? That's the whole of what this month has been about, or will be about, and what the run-up to it has been about too. It's all part of the creative process. Duh. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much. I'll see you soon.